I will tell you this. You are right. This is an important and long overdue objective. Just today in Los Angeles, we had a takedown. 8 individuals were arrested for allegedly bilking over $50 million of intended loss from our taxpayer monies. And yes, this includes leadership in state governments, our investigations do, because guess what? They are in many ways the actual conduit. They're letting it happen by not doing anything to stop these individuals stealing from the American people. And so you're going to see this Department of Justice pour all of our heart and soul into fraud cases all over this country for the foreseeable future.
Acting U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche there in the wake of President Trump's removal of Pam Bondi from the Attorney General position. Now we wait to find out who the actual nominee will be. To get the latest on this story that developed yesterday pretty quickly, let's speak to Fox News legal analyst, former defense attorney and law professor, and author Gregg Jarrett. Gregg, thank you for the time today. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, good to be with you, Annie.
Well, happy Easter weekend to you. I'm curious, yesterday, were you shocked by the news? Pam Bondi out. Somebody else will be nominated to that position. Did you think that this is something that was likely to happen?
Oh, I did, yeah. First of all, President Trump does have a tendency to clean house periodically. And second of all, there had been rumors that had been floating around for quite some time that, she was on the chopping block. I will say that Trump had nothing but praise for Pam Bondi. This was not an ugly, bitter, rancorous departure. He said, she did a tremendous job, and he's right about that. I mean, she cracked down on crime, prosecuting violent offenders, upholding law and order, all of which was one of the principal goals of the president, and, that's her legacy. But I would describe this, her firing, as a spring cleaning by the president. First there was Kristi Noem, now Pam Bondi. I promise you there will be others who have not met Trump's very high expectations. And there's nothing wrong with those expectations. And with the midterms fast approaching, I think now's the time to, shake out the rugs and sweep the floors. It's no secret that Bondi was blamed for slow-walking the Epstein files after vowing quite publicly that, it's on my desk, you'll see it, immediate transparency. There's a lesson here. Never make a promise you can't keep. So I think a new attorney general helps Trump turn the corner on what has been a nagging polemic. And second of all, there's conspicuous frustration that notable cases stalled under Pam Bondi, particularly involving those who shamefully weaponized the law to pursue Trump over everything from the Russia hoax to the 4, specious Democrat-led prosecutions. This was a horrible corruption and abuse of power. The president, I think, wants a new and more aggressive lawyer at the helm. And, look, Trump's a very vigilant, demanding boss. He wants results, and if you don't deliver, he moves on, and he finds somebody who can, and that's always been a part of his success. He is the polar opposite of Joe Biden, snoozing on the beach. I mean, Biden was so out to lunch, he couldn't, pick his cabinet out of a lineup. He didn't know their names. He never held, cabinet meetings, maybe once a year, and he'd read from cue cards.
Right.
Trump, on the other hand, is a very activist president, which can be exhausting if you don't meet his expectations. Immediacy and goal-oriented standards are a virtue for him.
So when President Trump is making I'm going to go with your analogy here of a spring cleaning. I've engaged a time or two in some feverish spring cleaning in my home. And when everything's clean, you kind of start making some new promises, new commitments to what happens next going forward. Do you feel as though I understand there to be a necessary separation between what the Department of Justice does and what the administration says and does, and the involvement there. You've literally written the books on the hoaxes that have been perpetuated against Donald Trump. Do you think the part of it has to do with wanting to see those cases prosecuted, potentially people arrested? I keep hearing from my listeners, they want to see people be arrested.
Yeah, and look, it's one of the reasons that a lot of people voted for Trump. He promised accountability. Now, it's not moving as quickly as he wants, so he's making a change. You know, there is a very intensive and broad investigation into the lawfare crusade against Trump that stretched for a decade. As I say, beginning, with the Russia hoax and then, extending through and including, the Democrat-led prosecutions against Trump, which were, and I've written extensively about it, absurd on their face. And they did it to destroy Trump and to help Joe Biden get reelected before, he dropped out. I'm not sure he's realized yet that he dropped out. So that investigation is taking place in Florida by a U.S. attorney with a whole crew of investigators and prosecutors. More than 100 subpoenas have been issued. I think they're looking very closely at some top people like John Brennan, the former CIA director, James Comey, who was fired in disgrace from the FBI for things like false statements and perjury. And there are other people who I think who are in legal jeopardy. And the prosecutors are no doubt looking at a couple of federal statutes in the criminal code, which are, conspiracy against rights and deprivation against rights under color of law. And, Trump's rights were violated. And, the law was weaponized to go after him with a vengeance. So, I have long written that there should be accountability. Whether we're going to see it, I don't know. But starting, with somebody else at the helm, there may be a better chance, thinks Trump.
Gregg Jarrett speaking with us, Fox News legal analyst. I encourage you to check out the long list of books that Gregg Jarrett has written on that particular subject matter. Just for my purposes, for our listeners' purposes, and for you to understand how deep the deep state went in on trying to keep Donald Trump from being able to attain office without letting the American people make that decision. They tried to keep the American people from even being allowed to have a say in it. Is it realistic to think that there could possibly be these high-profile arrests? Is it possible that would happen? Or do you think that those who are listening right now, who are waiting for the orange jumpsuits, the perp walks, and the handcuffs, you're going to need to let that go because that's not going to ever happen?
Well, it's difficult for me to project what will happen because grand juries, and one has been impaneled on this case down in Florida, are secret. And, the testimony they obtain, the documents they review happens behind closed doors. And you generally don't find out about what's happening until it indeed happens. So, I think prosecutions should happen. I would certainly add, Special Counsel Jack Smith to the list. But, all of this began back in 2016. And I would invite people to read my book, Witch Hunt, in which I detail all of it. I mean, it was Hillary Clinton who invented the Russia hoax, approving a plan to smear her opponent to distract from her own scandals and help get her elected. And, the CIA director, John Brennan, found out about it. And he rushed to the White House, and 2 meetings successively were held with Barack Obama and Joe Biden and James Comey and James Clapper, the DNI, and Brennan. And instead of coming clean and telling the American people the truth about, this hoax conjured up by Hillary, what did they do? They all clammed up. And instead, they had Comey at the FBI use it as a pretext to go after Trump through the FBI. And Comey relied on a notorious document that the FBI almost immediately debunked, the phony dossier by Christopher Steele, an ex-British spy who was hired and paid for by Democrats in the Hillary Clinton campaign. And then a few months later, after Trump was elected and their scheme didn't work, Obama had the CIA rewrite and alter the intelligence assessment that was so key to all of this to try to implicate Trump. And after that, Comey goes to Trump Tower and tries to entrap Trump, tells him about the dossier, and Trump says, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. That was a scheme that didn't work. And it went on and on and on until the Mueller report finally came out and said, gee whiz, there's no evidence of a collusion conspiracy. Think of the, $40 million that was wasted on that alone.
Yeah. And these things that you're talking about, this isn't your theory. You have written the book, Witch Hunt and others, on what has been perpetrated upon Donald Trump. But these are facts. And if people don't like them, then they've got a problem with the truth. I want to shift gears a little bit here. Speaking with Gregg Jarrett on the Annie Frey Show, Fox News legal analyst, I want to ask you about the job of the Attorney General, because with a lot of these cabinet positions, certainly there is a job to be done that requires a certain set of skills, but there is a little bit of public-facing communication that needs to be a part of the job to make sure that you can explain to the American people what you're doing and how you're doing it. But I feel like the Attorney General position it seems like an incredibly important and unique position when it comes to that initial skill, when it comes to prosecutorial skills, but also political public speaking skills. What do you want to see this next Attorney General look like, feel like, qualifications, requirements of whoever Donald Trump might pick?
Well, the two top candidates are both highly qualified. Todd Blanche has been named by Trump as acting Attorney General, and he has an advantage to the extent that he has the ear and the trust of the president. As the number two at the DOJ already, the transfer of power would be seamless. He is a superb lawyer. I know him. He is eminently qualified. He's had an outstanding career as a top federal prosecutor and one of the best defense attorneys around. He skillfully defended Trump as his personal lawyer through the various criminal cases. But as I say, most of all, he has the confidence of the president, who knows Blanche well. And, with Trump, I can assure you that counts for a lot. Now, Lee Zeldin is an interesting contender. It's no secret that Trump has been looking at him closely for the job because the president has come to admire the remarkable job that Zeldin has done as head of the EPA in achieving policy objectives. Zeldin is a low-key guy, but he moved lightning speed, which Trump likes, by the way, to clean up the cesspool at the CPA. Zeldin got rid of the inane and insane Biden regulations and restrictions. He uncovered billions in fraud and waste, including, remarkably, this slush fund of billions in hidden gold bars. Zeldin is also highly experienced in Washington, D.C., the so-called swamp, because he was a congressman there. He also has served in the military, so he gets high marks for that. But I think his experience as a D.C. insider is a valued asset that he would bring to the Department of Justice. And, I think he would be the most easily confirmed in the U.S. Senate.
All right. Well, it's so great to have you on the show on a Good Friday afternoon here, Gregg Jarrett. Thank you for the time. There's lots to discuss, and the news moves fast. So your analysis is always really appreciated here with us on our show.
Anytime, Annie. Happy to be with you.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon. Gregg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, former defense attorney and law professor, and the author of multiple fantastic evidence-based books that talk about the witch hunt, the hoax that was perpetrated upon Donald Trump. And he was writing them before it was popular to talk about those particular things. Gregg Jarrett here on the Annie Frey Show.